internet, hello you! Today I'm in my comfy clothes because it was a really slow day. However, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna be hungry, especially since I did finally a workout today. Um, so yeah, let's get changed. Okay, so nothing special today. I just thought some pasta and tomato sauce that's a bit fancier at least. I'm gonna use yesterday's half paprika, yesterday's half onion, and some carrots. As I mentioned in my first video, I am living abroad and I'm originally from Germany, where I grew up my entire life and now moved to Spain. I moved at a time that was really fit for me. I had already finished my bachelor's degree in Germany and decided to change my studies as well as the country I'm living in. This is neither the first time I lived in another country, nor the first time that I moved out from my parents' home. However, the first time I left the country to live away was when I went to live with my grandma, who lives in another country of the EU. Therefore, that is a completely different experience since it was a short time and it was set for half a year. I was still in school in 11th grade and I also already knew the area. I've already been to my grandma's a couple of times and knew the city. The only thing I didn't know was the school. But I could ask my mom, I could ask my family about traditions and customs. Maybe I'm going to talk about it a different time because in Germany you don't have uniforms, for example, and in my mom's home country they do have school uniforms. These aren't the only things that changed. However, since I've already been to the country a couple of times in my life and I'm in contact with my family, I didn't have a lot of surprises during my stay. So moving here was a different feeling. Now I'm still in Europe and I made some friends in the German city I did my bachelor's in who are from Spain and who I could ask some questions about moving and the culture, who helped me with the administration staff, who also helped me out with stuff concerning, for example, health insurance or other stuff. I've also already been in Spain a few times before, but it was always on holidays and never to meet someone I knew, so I was never this close to Spanish people. And right now, that has completely changed, and I want to talk about some of the experiences I've made while living here. I moved here in September, now it's May, so close to 9 months. Well, already time flies by. That I'm living in Spain, and I am lucky enough to have made some really good friends. All of them are Spanish speaking, so during my day, most of the time I speak in Spanish, and then, since I made sure to maintain the contact with my friends in Germany, I also speak and listen to a lot of German because I make and receive a lot of voicemails. In the beginning, I didn't think that my life here was that different from my previous life in Germany, since I still have the same socioeconomic background that I had during my bachelor. I'm also still cooking for myself, so food didn't change that much. And I'm still in the student bubble, and concerning students in Germany and Spain, there really is not that big of a difference, especially since I stayed in the same field. So for my bachelor in Germany, I studied physics, but already with hefty focus on math. And right now, I'm studying math with some physics included, so the kind of people I'm meeting at uni is pretty similar. I should add that here I met my closest friends outside of studies. They're still students, but they study completely different topics, which is great. I really appreciate talking about anything else but math and physics in my free time. Don't get me wrong, I love math and physics. But in my free time, it's free time, and I'd rather write and discuss social and political topics or play some games. In the beginning, I didn't know anybody, and this is already the first point I want to make. When I got here, I really had to learn how to be with myself. Especially since earlier in Germany, I had a lot of friends that I was really, really close with, and I'd meet roughly one of them every day after uni. Usually, I met some of them in the morning during lectures, and we'd go eat together in a larger group. In the afternoons, we often had some tutorium to attend that we would visit together if possible,
and the rest of the day at uni we studied together, worked on our assignments, or just played cards. Student life. We would meet up in the evenings to cook or to go on a walk together pretty often, since I lived in a pretty small city and most of my friends were just a short bike ride away. Most times we just hang out and chill, but other times we went out. However, over time the group became pretty stable and my main friends all knew each other. And even if I was not out and about, I was never really home alone because I had grown really close with my flatmate. I'm telling you all this not because I wanted to share my love for my friends, then this video would never end, but to paint the picture of how included I was. Especially because once I told my friends about my plans to move away, interactions also became a bit more intense. They were all happy for me, of course, but goodbyes are always hard and sad. It all just made the cut really hard and heavy. Now that I moved to Spain, I am still living with two other women, and while I really like them, you have to respect the language barrier, and this is why we aren't as close as I used to be with the woman I had lived before. Speaking of which, I want to address the language barrier. When I moved, my Spanish level officially was B2, which is what I needed to apply for university here, which makes total sense since all my lectures are in Spanish. In the application process, they wanted to see a language certificate that says that you have the language level required. However, spoken Spanish and the Spanish that you learn in class isn't quite the same. Especially when I'm talking, I do make a lot of mistakes. While in contrast, when I'm writing, I can think about words and think about, would I use this tense? Is it that tense? Do I have to use contigo? And in spoken Spanish, I just don't have the time to think about vocabulary and grammar. And to this day, I misuse a lot of irregular verbs and tenses. I tell myself that if I find the motivation, I'll go through the irregular verbs again. Well, let's just say most of my Spanish has improved by passive learning. Meaning, I listen to people, I talk to people, and yes, this in the beginning can be really embarrassing because, you talk kind of bad and you're bad at expressing yourself. And you can't really have that deep of a conversation with someone if you're lacking, I don't know, a quarter of the words you would normally use. On top of that, some of the topics that are interesting to me because they center about what's happening in Germany aren't interesting to the people here. Why would they? And the reverse is also true. When they debate on a public topic, oftentimes I just don't know about it. So even if my Spanish were perfect, I wouldn't know the culture well enough to participate in that conversation. Same goes for cultural references or people they know that I've never met. As I said, I am still in close contact with friends and family in Germany, and whenever I want to talk about what's happening in Germany, I text or call them. And while I appreciate all my conversations with them, they of course take up some time and energy, which means that I lose out on energy and time that I would otherwise invest into my relationships right here, right now. And this often brings me into a tricky situation where I have to decide between a call back home and meeting friends here. The thing is, I believe it's important to maintain my relationships with the friends I made back in Germany because it will just become harder to stay in contact. And I don't know, maybe my future self will disagree, but right now it feels like I have to nurture my old friendships if I don't want them to fade out. And if I haven't yet made myself clear enough, I want to repeat here that I love my friends and don't want to lose them. I don't think I will, but I'd rather not find out and keep investing my time because they're worth it. The struggle of balancing old and new friendships isn't special to moving abroad, and I would have to get accustomed to it no matter where I had moved. To explain the struggle further, you need to know that I would describe myself as extroverted, and that stays true no matter where I am. This means I am seeking out human interactions to fill up my social battery, and in that sense, I am blessed because I naturally go out and actively try to meet new people. And this desire definitely helps overcoming any shyness about my language. So far, this sounds like a good trait to have. And as long as I can speak one of the languages I'm comfortable in, it definitely is. It only becomes a problem when I have to communicate in a language I'm not yet fluent in. All my early conversations took up quite a bit of my brain power. I already needed to concentrate on the words and therefore had less time to concentrate on the context, especially in the beginning when I was formulating my response ahead of time while simultaneously trying to understand the other person. So, while talking, on one hand, gave me energy, I simultaneously lost energy and couldn't stick to the speed and rhythm I was used to because I regularly needed time to myself just so my brain could catch a break. I would often join get togethers a bit later or leave a bit earlier compared to my habits in Germany. And while I was with my friends or in uni, I would still space out from time to time. I think this made it especially hard to connect to people from my class because first, I didn't want to speak loudly in front of a group of people I didn't really know. And second, I needed all the breaks we got to rest because the math was already hard enough and the lectures being in Spanish didn't make it any easier. I'm really, really grateful for anyone that, during my first few months here, took their time and listened to me stumbling through a story. I like to believe that I have gotten a lot better, and it's all thanks to them and their patience for me. They didn't choose that I can't articulate myself correctly while I knew what I was getting myself into, and still, every now and then I would grow frustrated because I was unable to tell my story and share my thoughts the way I wanted to, or couldn't make a joke because I didn't know how to say it, or the other person could already foreshadow the end of my story or joke way ahead of time. And it's not just me not being able to talk properly. I also didn't understand a lot of things. And there I really had to learn to laugh along, even though I don't like being left in the dark. But especially in noisy places, I just couldn't understand what was being said or misunderstood, but was expected to answer. One prominent example is a friend asking if I liked the food, and I answered, full of confidence, no, because, well, I thought he asked if I wanted a napkin. Whoopsies. Luckily, most times it becomes obvious that I just misunderstood or didn't understand at all pretty quickly, and we can resolve the misunderstanding. I try to ignore these instances, and it's true, they happen less and less often. But sometimes people look at me funnily because they as well have to concentrate on what I am saying to understand what I'm telling them. Long story short, you might think that you know what's ahead of you because you obviously aren't a native, but experiencing it is still a different story. Especially the thinking about your words before saying them surprised me. I never had that in any other language before, not even in Spanish classes, because there, even when you talk about this topic you just read a text about, where your thoughts are already organized and the vocabulary fresh. While here, I had some conversations where I was taken aback by the information, or had to process the information first before answering. On the positive side, I struggled enough in the beginning to still see progress. That is something that hit me hard the last time I was outside of Germany. There, I might have started at a higher level and made a lot of progress in the first 2 or 3 months and then stagnated. That really demotivated me, and therefore, this time I mentally prepared myself for this frustration. But it seems the situation is different, and so far I keep making measurable progress. And not gonna lie, that's pretty encouraging. I obviously want to get better and dream of one day having a functioning autocomplete in Spanish. But until then, I will also celebrate when I can watch a film without subtitles, eavesdrop in some stranger's convo, or relax during talks with my friends. Another thing I didn't expect was for my classes to be this late. I think most bachelor students have lectures between 8 and 14, while my lectures start at 16 or 18 and last up to 20 o'clock. I don't want to lament over the change in rhythm because I'm fine with it. It just makes making friends a bit harder, I guess. Back in Germany, having lunch together is one of the most important ways to make friends because everyone is going to the cafeteria and it's easy to ask someone if they want to grab lunch together or meet people you kinda know in the line and talk during the break. But since classes here start so late, everyone just comes before they start and isn't on campus before. And even if they were, I wouldn't know because either I'm not or we are different times at different places. I don't know if it's just the people I've met, but I feel like here people are a bit more picky about who they invite over to their place, and you first need to earn their trust. Earning someone's trust can be quite hard when you lack the words to properly articulate your feelings, and deeper conversations were also harder than necessary. What really helped me was actively doing stuff together. Two of my closest friends and I, for example, went for a short hike together, and helping each other climb a tree or jump over a river forms a bond and builds trust without the need of words. I would also recommend playing games because it loosens the atmosphere and the situation automatically gets more playful. And depending on the game, you have an easy topic to talk about and to get to know each other. All of this is based on only my experience, and I wouldn't claim for it to be universal. So if you yourself are planning to move abroad, take it with a grain of salt. I also think that joining Erasmus or some other exchange program changes your pretty much because you are automatically around people who are also looking to make friends and are discovering the city for the first time, while all the people I met here already know the city, so they are less enthusiastic to explore it. On the other hand, they know the good and nice places. Despite all obstacles, I am really happy with my decision and would definitely do it again. Next time, I would watch more TV in Spanish before moving here just to get used to the spoken language and maybe learn how to sit in silence without growing uncomfortable. Everything else, I think, is super dependent on the people around you, and then once you're in the situation, I would recommend enrolling in social or sports clubs and definitely going to public events in your city. That might be a reading, a trivia night. For me, it was an open mic at a bar and a drag show that I attended where I met my friends. Sure, I was super nervous starting a conversation and then even more nervous texting them and asking for a meetup. It luckily all worked out, but I feel like even if it hadn't, I would have grown as a person. So really, it's a win-win. In case you're watching this and also think about moving abroad or have just moved abroad and have any questions, you're welcome to leave them in the comment section, or maybe you have some experience yourself. In that case, feel free to add some of your insight. I'd love to read both the questions and the remarks. I hope to greet you again in my kitchen. Until then, goodbye. Forgot to make a video straight away, so this is what's left after uh, me eating the first portion.